The weight of silence dawn broke over Ranthambore National Park in a symphony of birdsong and golden light. Anya adjusted her tripod at the edge of the watering hole, her breath forming small clouds in the cool morning air. Behind her, a jeep approached quietly, its engine barely disturbing the wilderness soundtrack. "You're earlier than expected," she said, without turning around. Arjun met a step from the vehicle, carrying a thermos. "The Tigers won't wait for our meeting schedule." 1 month had passed since the night at Nir Mahal Palace. 1 month of sleepless nights reading and rereading Vikram's letter until his words became imprinted on her heart. 1 month of questioning every memory, every assumption that had shaped her adult life. "Coffee?" Arjun offered, extending the thermos. Anya nodded, finally turning to face him. In the morning light, away from the formality of the gala, he looked different, more approachable in his field clothes, with stubble shadowing his jaw. "I've reviewed your proposal for expanding the buffer zone," she said, accepting the coffee. "It's ambitious, but necessary." He surveyed the landscape with practiced eyes. The villagers need sustainable alternatives to depending on forest resources. They fell into a comfortable silence watching the watering hole. Anya had expected awkwardness after their last encounter, but instead found an unexpected ease in Arjun's presence. Perhaps because he carried pieces of Vikram's history that she had lost. Or perhaps because he asked nothing of her but her professional expertise. He would have loved this place, Anya said suddenly. Vikram always talked about designing wildlife, observation structures that would blend completely with the environment. Arjun's expression softened. He sketched concepts for elevated pathways through canopies, said photographers like you needed better angles without disturbing the ecosystem. A painful warmth spread through her chest. You really knew him well. We're different sides of the same coin. He wanted to create spaces that honored nature. I wanted to protect the nature within those spaces. Arjun hesitated. After his diagnosis, he made me executor of his ideas. The Conservation Trust was partially his vision. Something clicked into place for Anya. The anonymous donor who funded my first exhibition in Delhi, that was you, wasn't it? Arjun looked away, suddenly interested in the horizon. Vikram believed in your talent. I was honoring his judgment. For 9 years, she challenged. Your work stands on its own merit, Anya. My support was merely practical application of resources. A rustle in the underbrush saved him from further questioning. Anya swung her camera toward the sound just as a tigress emerged with 2 cubs, their orange coats glowing in the morning light. For the next 20 minutes, neither spoke as Anya photographed the family and Arjun made notes on their condition and behavior. Only when the tigers disappeared back into the forest did Anya lower her camera. I'm not sure if I should thank you or be angry with you. For what specifically? Arjun asked, his tone carefully neutral. For letting me believe a lie for so long? For watching over my career from the shadows? For knowing me when I didn't know you existed? She shook her head. I built my entire adult identity around being the woman Vikram Kapoor abandoned. Who am I supposed to be now? Arjun studied her face. Perhaps just Anya Sharma, one of India's finest wildlife photographers. The woman who captures moments others miss. His voice softened. The past doesn't define you unless you allow it to, says the man who has spent 9 years keeping a promise to a ghost. A rare smile transformed his serious face. Touché, perhaps. We're both haunted in our own ways. Over the next 2 weeks, they fell into an unexpected rhythm. Days spent surveying the park, meeting with local communities about conservation initiatives, and photographing wildlife. Evenings spent reviewing data and images, their professional discussions gradually giving way to personal ones. Arjun shared stories of Vikram that healed wounds Anya hadn't realized were still open. In turn, she found herself revealing the person she had become in the decades since her struggles, triumphs, and the solitary path she had chosen. On their final evening in Ranthambore, seated beside a small campfire outside the research station, Anya finally asked the question that had lingered between them. What happens when your promise to Vikram is fulfilled? When I've heard all his stories and read all his words? Arjun looked into the flames, his profile sharp against the darkness. Then perhaps we discover if there's a connection between us that exists independent of him. His honesty startled her. Is there? He turned to her, his expression more vulnerable than she had ever seen it. I've spent years knowing you through your work, Anya, watching how you see the world. I'd like the chance to know the woman behind the camera not as Vikram's Anya, but simply as yourself. She studied him in the firelight, this complicated man who had carried her past so carefully. I think, she said slowly, that might be possible. Whispers from yesterday, the private study in the east wing of Nir Mahal Palace, felt worlds away from the glittering charity gala. Anya sat rigid on an antique armchair, her camera bag clutched in her lap like a shield. Across from her, Arjun Mehta poured 2 glasses of water, his movements deliberate and unhurried. How did you know Vikram? She finally asked, breaking the tense silence. We were roommates at the architecture program in Mumbai before I left for business school, Arjun replied, offering her a glass. We remained close afterward. Anya accepted the water but didn't drink. If you're his friend, then you know what he did. A shadow crossed Arjun's face. What do you believe he did, Anya? He left me. The words emerged sharper than she intended. Without explanation. One day we were planning our future in Barcelona. He had an internship offer. I had a photography fellowship. The next, she swallowed hard. The next, I found messages from some woman named Kavita on his phone. When I tried to confront him, he was gone, transferred to another university program, changed his number. Arjun set his glass down and leaned forward. Kavita wasn't his lover, Anya. She was his oncology nurse. The room seemed to tilt beneath her. What? Vikram was diagnosed with acute myeloid leukemia 3 months before he disappeared. Arjun's voice remained steady, but his eyes held unmistakable pain. He kept it from everyone except his parents and me. He was determined to beat it without burdening anyone, especially you. Anya's hand trembled, water spilling over the rim of her glass. That's not possible. We spent every day together. I would have noticed the early treatments were scheduled during your photography workshops. Remember those weekends you were? In Jaipur? Bangalore? Arjun's gaze never wavered. He timed his appointments meticulously. Memories flooded back Vikram's unexplained fatigue. The bruises he attributed to clumsiness at construction sites. The weight loss he blamed on stress. Over finals. Signs she had dismissed or explained away. The messages you found were Kavita trying to convince him to tell you the truth, Arjun continued. She believed you deserved to know, that you could help him through it. But Vikram refused. Why? Question emerged as barely a whisper. Because the prognosis had changed. The treatments weren't working. When he learned he might have less than a year, he made a decision. Arjun's voice softened. He believed leaving you with anger would be easier than leaving you with grief. Anya set down her glass before it could slip from her numb fingers. He died thinking I hated him. No. Arjun reached into his jacket pocket and withdrew an envelope, yellowed with age. He died knowing exactly how much you loved him. Why he made me promise to find you when the time was right. She stared at the envelope, her name written in the familiar, architectural precision of Vikram's handwriting. When he passed 11 months after his diagnosis, 9 years ago. You're only finding me now? A flash of anger cut through her shock. Arjun's expression remained calm, but his eyes reflected something deeper. I've known where you were for years, Anya. I followed your career since your first exhibition in Delhi, but the promise wasn't. Just to find you was to find you when you were ready to hear the truth. How could you possibly know when I'd be ready? A hint of something almost like tenderness crossed his face. Because I recognize healing when I see it. Your early work was all sharp contrasts and harsh exposures, beautiful but full of pain. The Snow Leopard series last year was different. For the first time, your photographs showed patience, empathy, forgiveness. Anya took the envelope with unsteady hands, feeling the weight of years pressing down on her. What else haven't you told me? Many things, Arjun admitted. But perhaps they're better discovered than told. He stood slowly. I have a conservation meeting in Ranthambore next month. Your expertise on the local tiger population would be invaluable, professionally speaking. She looked up at him, this stranger who had carried her past for nearly a decade. Why would you do all this for Vikram? Initially, yes. Arjun moved toward the door, then paused. But people's motivations evolve, Ms. Sharma, just like your photography. After he left, Anya sat motionless, the unopened letter in her hands containing the truth she had spent 10 years running for man, perhaps. The permission to finally stop running? Patterns in light 3 months later, Anya found herself in an unfamiliar position, seated on the other side of the camera. The journalist from National Geographic adjusted her recorder as Anya glanced toward the door for the 4th time in 20 minutes. You mentioned a partnership with the Meta Conservation Trust, the journalist prompted. That's quite a coup for an independent photographer. Anya refocused her attention. The trust is doing groundbreaking work with wildlife corridors. My role is documenting the impact of habitat connectivity on endangered species migration, and your relationship with Arjun Mehta himself. The industry is buzzing about your collaboration. Before Anya could formulate a professional response, the door opened and Arjun entered the hotel conference room, apologizing quietly for his lateness. He took the seat beside her, his hand briefly touching hers beneath the table, a small gesture that had become their private language over the past months. Mr. Mehta, perfect timing? The journalist smiled. I was just asking Ms. Sharma about your working relationship. Professional respect evolved into creative partnership, he answered smoothly. Anya sees patterns in light and behavior that transform conservation data into compelling narratives. The interview continued, but Anya found her thoughts drifting. To the evolution, Arjun described, their work together had begun as separate orbits gradually drawing closer his analytical approach complementing her intuitive one. Weekly calls about project logistics had extended into hours-long conversations. Site visits had stretched into dinners discussing everything from conservation politics to favorite books. That's a wrap, the journalist finally announced, gathering her equipment. The feature should run in the March issue. After she left, Anya exhaled deeply. That was more exhausting than tracking snow leopards. You handled it beautifully, Arjun said, loosening his tie. Though you tensed whenever she approached personal questions, because I still don't know how to define whatever this is between us. Anya gestured between them. Colleagues? Friends? Something else entirely? Arjun considered her words carefully. Does it require definition? The world seems to think so. She stood, moving to the window overlooking Mumbai's skyline. My assistant showed me the social media speculation. Wildlife photographer captures elusive billionaire. They're creating a narrative without knowing the complexity. He joined her. At the window, what part of the complexity troubles you most? It. That I might never have known you without Vikram's absence, she admitted. That grief and secrets connected us before anything else could. Is that so different from any relationship? Arjun asked quietly. Everyone comes with a past that shapes their present connections. Our past has a name and a face. Sometimes, I feel him watching us, Arjun. His expression grew thoughtful. I spent years feeling that too. Wondering if each decision honored his memory or betrayed it. He turned to face her fully. But recently I've realized something. Vikram didn't bring us together so we could preserve his memory in amber. He wanted us both to live fully. How can you be so certain? Arjun hesitated, then reached into his pocket and withdrew a key. Because of what he left behind. I've been waiting for the right moment to show you. The key led them to a storage facility in Bandra, where a climate-controlled unit contained dozens of architectural models and hundreds of sketches of Vikram's unrealized visions. As Anya moved through the collection in stunned silence, she discovered designs for wildlife observation platforms, sustainable community centers, and conservation education facilities. He created all of these after his diagnosis, Arjun explained, when he knew he wouldn't live to build them himself. In the center of the room stood a detailed model of a photography exhibition space integrated into a forest canopy. Attached was a note in Vikram's handwriting, for when Anya is ready to show the world what she sees. Tears blurred her vision as she touched the intricate miniature. You've been implementing these designs through your conservation projects. As many as possible, Arjun confirmed. But this one, He gestured to the exhibition model. This one needed your involvement. Why didn't you show me this sooner? For the same reason I waited years to find you. Some truths need the right moment. His eyes held hers. Some connections need to form on their own terms. Understanding washed over her. The trust projects she had documented over the past months. The architectural elements that had always felt strangely familiar they had been. Vikram's visions brought to life through Arjun's resources and her documentation. We've been collaborating with him all along, she whispered. Yes. Arjun took her hand, his touch gentle. But increasingly, we've been creating something that belongs only to us. In the quiet of that room, surrounded by the creative legacy of the man they had both loved in different ways, Anya finally recognized the truth. The past had brought them together, but the present with its complicated, unexpected emotions was entirely their own creation. Framing the future, the gallery hummed with conversations and the subtle notes of a string quartet. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, Bangalore's lights sparkled against the evening sky, mirroring the elegant crowd inside. Convergence read the exhibition Binara, its collaboration between the Meta Conservation Trust and photographer Anya Sharma. Anya moved through the space, serving visitors' reactions to her images, paired with architectural renderings. The exhibition space itself was special, built from Vikram's designs. Realized through Arjun's resources, the structure seemed to float among the trees of the botanical garden. The Minister of Environment just confirmed his donation, Priya reported, appearing at her side. And 3 corporate foundations have requested meetings about funding the corridor project. That's excellent news, Anya replied, scanning the room. Have you seen Arjun? On the balcony? Said he needed air. Priya hesitated. There's something else. A woman is here, says she knew Vikram. Kavita Ranganathan. Anya's heart skipped. The nurse from the text messages that had appended her. Life? A decade ago. Where? By the Tiger Migration series? Moving through the crowd, Unya spotted a woman in her 50s, studying a photograph of a tiger crossing between fragmented habitats. The placard beside it read, "The spaces between define the journey, Ms. Ranganathan." Anya approached cautiously. Woman turned, her eyes widening in recognition. Anya Sharma, after all these years. Her smile was gentle. Vikram would be so proud of this work. Thank you for coming. Anya struggled to reconcile this kind-faced woman with the villain she had constructed in her mind for so many years. I owe you an apology. Afita shook her head. No apologies needed. We all did what we thought was right at the time, even when we disagreed. She glanced around the gallery. Arjun finally kept his promise. You knew about that? I was there when Vikram made him swear to find you. Someday. Arjun resisted, said, You deserve to know immediately. Kavita's expression grew thoughtful. But Vikram insisted that timing mattered more than truth. He said she'll need to hate me before she can forgive me. A familiar ache pressed against Anya's chest. He was wrong about that. I never truly hated him, just the situation I didn't understand. Perhaps Kavita acknowledged. But he was right about Arjun being the one to bridge your worlds. She nodded toward the balcony where Arjun stood alone, silhouetted against the city lights. He's carried both your stories carefully, I hope. You're writing a new one now. After Kavita moved on, Anya made her way to the balcony. Arjun turned at her approach, his expression softening. The exhibition is a tremendous success, he said. The conservation director from Kenya wants to implement similar awareness campaigns there. I just met Kavita, Anya replied, moving beside him at the railing. Understanding flickered across his face. I should have warned you she might come. No, it was good. Healing. She studied his profile. She said something interesting, that you initially argued against Vikram's plan to keep his illness from me. Arjun was quiet for a moment. I believed in transparency, in giving people agency to make their own choices about difficult situations. Yet you kept his secret for years after he was gone, because I gave him my word. His voice was low. And because when I finally found you, I understood his fear. He didn't want to be the center of your story, the tragedy that defined you. He wanted to be the chapter that made the rest of your story possible. Anya considered this. And what about your story, Arjun? Have you been living for his memory all these years? At first, perhaps? He turned to face her fully. But increasingly, I've been living for possibilities I never anticipated. The honesty in his eyes made her breath catch. Over the past 6 months, their relationship had evolved in careful increments, professional respect deepening into friendship. Friendship blossoming into something neither rushed to label. They had moved forward with deliberate steps, each conscious of the complicated foundation beneath them. I have something for you, Arjun said, reaching into his jacket. He withdrew a small leather portfolio. One last piece of Vikram I've been keeping. Inside was a sketch of 2 figures standing at a crossroads, paths diverging and reconnecting in elaborate patterns. The margin note read, "Not all who part are lost to each other." He drew this the week before he died, Arjun explained. Never fully understood it until recently. Anya traced the intricate pathways with her fingertip. All this time I thought moving forward meant leaving him behind. But it's more complex than that, isn't it? The past doesn't disappear, it transforms. Arjun's hand found hers on the railing. Like your photographs capturing a moment that continues to exist while creating something entirely new from it. Inside the gallery, applause erupted as the environment minister announced a major funding commitment to the Wildlife Corridor project. Their professional triumph, born from separate journeys that had unexpectedly converged. We should go back in, Anya said, though she made no move to leave. In a moment, Arjun's fingers intertwined with hers. I've been thinking about the next phase of the conservation project. The leopard sanctuaries in the Western Ghats. It will require extensive time in the field, difficult terrain, remote locations. His tone was carefully neutral, but his eyes held a question. Would your schedule allow for such a commitment? Anya understood what he was really asking, not just about work, but about continuing this journey together, stepping fully into a future that honored the past without being constrained by it. Think, she said slowly, that my schedule is opening up for the right projects, the right collaborations. Relief and something deeper warmed his expression. Behind them, the exhibition continued, their shared vision bringing together conservation, art and memory, in a space designed by a man who had loved them both in different ways. As they turned to rejoin their guests, Anya felt a sense of completion. The story that had begun with betrayal and misunderstanding had transformed into something neither she nor Arjun could have imagined. Their shared past would always be part of them, not as a shadow, but as foundation stones in the bridge. They were building toward whatever came next. The future, like one of her photographs, was being framed by their choices in this moment. Focused, intentional, and finally, completely their own.